I don't know how familiar you are with this figure, but a scholar by the name of Sherman Jackson is a professor, the head of the Islamic Studies Department at USC, University of Southern California. And I attended one of his lectures many years ago and heard a quote from him that really stuck with me. And so that is the theme of the Khutbah. He said that what our community needs, and this is probably one of the most common questions we get in our times. We ask every day, every speaker, every scholar, every opportunity we get, both in the Middle East, US, Muslim world, non-Muslim world, we ask, what do we need? What is our Ummah missing? What are we supposed to do? What's going on? Questions along those lines. And I really liked his answer, it stood out. And he said that what our community needs is a revival. A revival of our intellectual and cultural authority. And that sounds obviously, he's an academic, he's a scholar, so of course big words. But if you break it down, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's very simple and very practical. And here's how it goes. A revival, I think that's pretty clear. And I think across the board, every sect and every group and every ideology, everyone agrees that we need a revival. Some say our spirit is missing. We're missing the Islamic spirit, right? There's a group for that. We're missing leadership in politics, etc., civic engagement. We're missing knowledge and da'wah and so on. He says an intellectual and cultural authority. So those are the two parts of the Khutbah today. Now what does that look like practically? Well, the best way is through an example. Examples always help, and I believe that that's one of the primary reasons why we have the Quran and the Sunnah, the theory and the practice. That's just how we are built. In our context, as American Muslims, if we think about some of the biggest names we're familiar with, and if we look at our history, the centuries-old history of Muslims in America, I humbly believe that the two that stand out the most, and I think many would agree, are Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. Muhammad Ali, Hajj Malik Shabazz, or Malcolm X. Malcolm X was the intellectual, and Muhammad Ali was the cultural icon, the popularizer. So hopefully you guys see the analogy. An intellectual and cultural authority. So Malcolm X was the intellectual. He spent all day and all night studying. For those who are familiar with the story, and if you aren't, there are plenty of YouTube videos. I'm not going to go into his whole biography. It is the most, or one of the most read autobiographies, period, which means a lot because there are billions of people who have ever lived. But one chapter is of primary importance to us now, which is that he spent 7.5 years in prison, right? And hopefully none of us ever end up in prison or never were in prison. But what he did at that time is different than what most do. And although now he's building this legacy and people are kind of following his footsteps, he spent it in the library and basically between the books. And he probably read the entire library of that prison, which is an excellent use of his time. He jokes that he got his degree from Massachusetts State Penitentiary. Right? Think about those who are studying at Rice. But anyway, the results speak for themselves, right? He read everything from history, law, religion, politics. He actually read the entire dictionary as well, because one of the ideas that the Nation of Islam and them had, I'm not going to go into details, they had the idea that we don't speak well. If you really want to debate, and it was all about blacks and whites at that time, we'll go into, if you want to speak well, you need to know your vocabulary. Right? We are not well read or well spoken, so we need to go back and learn the language properly. That was part of it, and also learn our identity. Anyway, words are important. He read the entire dictionary. And like I said, law, politics, religion, history. The results is when he came out of prison, not only did he build places of worship or masajid across the country, or temples, whatever you want to call them, he also debated against the top intellectuals of his time. And the media was always very keen to get his opinion. Usually few words that are well spoken. Actually, most people will tell you that he's probably the most confident and inspirational speakers they've ever heard. One of the most charismatic orators. Few words, usually very powerful, very well spoken, and especially considering the fact that most of the community that he grew up with, if not all of them, and most African Americans at that time were not among the most educated or the most professional or the most knowledgeable, etc. So he stood out in that regard, all right? And like I said, he built masajid across the country, and he led one of these small but fastest growing religious groups in the country. Eventually later on he accepts Islam properly, and maybe that's for another time, the rest of the history. But the point today is, as an intellectual authority, his legacy was that he inspires da'is, scholars, and speakers for generations to come. I mean, who doesn't know, who hasn't heard of Malcolm X? At his time, possibly we wouldn't even find that 1% of the population would support him and back him up and agree with his ideology or his beliefs and his teachings. Today, I would say a third to a half, it's kind of hard to tell, but a third to the half, especially the majority of our generation as millennials, look at him as a leader, as an intellectual, as someone who's ahead of their times, someone who understood things clearly and broke things down. One of the things that's beautiful about him is that he took these complicated concepts. We're talking about 400 years of history of blacks enslaved and persecuted, discriminated against, and suffering in this country. And even before that in West Africa and so on. The whole history, he broke it down in very simple terms that everybody could understand. The upper class, the lower class, the rich, the poor, blacks and whites, and the educated, and those ones who are educated. So he has a place in history. And there are plenty of ayahs, of course, that can be brought up in terms of speaking truth to power, and in terms of seeking the truth. And his life is very clearly is a very clear example of someone who's sincerely always looking for the truth, and once he finds it, he follows it. I don't say blindly, but very strictly, and he teaches it and calls people to it, and that's definitely an element of the Sunnah. An ayah that comes to mind is وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Who's better in speech, and who's better, period, than the one who's calling to Allah, and he dedicated his life to bringing people to the worship of Allah, which is our purpose in life and our higher calling. So that's Malcolm X. Again, it's an intellectual and cultural authority that we need to revive. Cultural authority, so today, we think of YouTube stars, celebrities, athletes, etc., right? We think of celebrities, cultural icons. Unfortunately, many of them are names that we'd be ashamed to mention at the Khutbah, at the pulpit, but names that many of us know, and hopefully some that we don't know. But the singers and the dancers are pretty much the main cultural icons of today, although there are also some leadership gurus, some entrepreneurs, and others that also have the stage. And exceedingly, the last generation or two, we see some da'is and scholars kind of on that celebrity status, and that has its pros and cons, but I just want to give you the picture. But nobody can dispute Muhammad Ali's status as a cultural and social icon because, well, for many reasons. So he took an ideology, like I said, that was less than 1% of the US population, took it to being a third to half, if not more, in a span of, what, 30, 40 years? Yeah, I mean, before he died, may Allah have mercy on him, he died last year. A few years before that, during George Bush's presidency, which is towards the end of the last chapter of his life, right? Because he was alive in the 60s. So, he got the medal, or the congressional medal, or whatever the medal was, from George Bush himself, which is really a symbol that he was accepted pretty much by everyone in the country, because the new conservatives were the last to accept, a black leader. But anyway, he wasn't as well loved and respected during his time, but I mean, he fought for decades, and he fought inside the ring, he fought outside the ring. He took political stands that were really tough, that affected his finances, his reputation, his everything, his belt, which is his livelihood. It's important to recognize that that's not just your prestige and your passion and your hobby, but it's also your livelihood. His family is dependent on his income. So for those sacrifices and decades of teaching and preaching and giving dawah and social services and humanitarian work and feeding the poor and the needy, etc., he finally found his place as being loved and accepted. And he was labeled the athlete of the 20th century, and that is huge. Think about how many sports, 40, 50 sports that people watch regularly, how many thousands of athletes in each of these areas. He wasn't the greatest boxer of all time, the greatest basketball player of all time, or soccer, or football, baseball, the greatest athlete of the 20th century, 100 years, and among many titles. And that was well-deserved, but also it's a good example for us. And I didn't mention this because I thought it's obvious, but I picture people that are obviously Muslim, so it's not just that they're activists, speakers, scholars, athletes, but these are Muslim Americans, like most of us here, or at least some of us, therefore they are examples for us, and that was kind of an underlying assumption. Muhammad Ali was the face, so Malcolm X was, you can say, the mind, the intellect behind it, the ideology. Muhammad Ali was the popularizer. He was fun and funny, he was witty, he was really good with words, well-spoken, and he made people laugh. He couldn't enter a room without everybody flocking to him, everyone listening to him, everyone laughing and enjoying their time, whether they agreed or disagreed, whether they loved him or hated him. There's a good example for us of that, and just like I said with Malcolm X, there are elements of the Sunnah you can clearly see in their lives. I think everyone would agree. So the first part of the Khutbah, we talked about the big picture, we say the community level or the Ummah level, which was a revival of the intellectual cultural authority we once had, don't really have anymore, working towards it. That's the theme. And it sounds good, I think everyone agrees that it's cool to hear about people like Malcolm X and so on. But one, it's historical, right? Both of them have passed away decades ago, and obviously people are following their footsteps. But it's big picture, feel-good stuff, and it's community level, but how about us as individuals? So that's the short second half. On a personal level, you're going to fight, every single one of us is given a unique set of challenges, a unique package, you can say, of strengths and weaknesses and challenges and tests, because Allah says, do you think you're going to believe and that you won't be tested? The first ayah or the second ayah of Surah Al-Ankabut. It just doesn't work that way, right? You're going to be tested after saying you believe, whether you're going to be steadfast and certain upon this faith and patient. And although each of us has our own unique package, our own tests and challenges, there are some general advice and general guidelines that you can use. This is something that worked well for me. I'd like to share it. Helps me wrap my head around kind of the big picture. And it's that in your journey in life, sometimes it feels like you're juggling, and that there are so many different balls, and that sometimes you drop them and you pick them up, and sometimes you feel like you're not even moving. Am I going anywhere? Am I really improving, or am I just going through the rhythms, the motions? So this helped me to break down your life and your personal development into 3 categories, so that you're juggling, but it's 3 balls rather than 5, 15, 20, 25. It's ilm, ibadah, amal. And one of the beautiful things is that it's alliteration, right? They all start with the same letter, easy to remember, easy to. Ilm, ibadah, amal, which is knowledge, spirituality, and activism. Right? Ilm refers to knowledge, and we know that the first word that Allah revealed to Prophet Muhammad, think about it, it's the last book that Allah is going to reveal to mankind. It's for the time of the Prophet and all to come to the judgment. It's the last book, it's God's words himself. And the first word of these 600 pages is Iqra. There's no doubt, I think, that Allah chose the word very purposefully. And that there's plenty of meaning for it. And we know plenty of ayat and hadith about the importance of seeking knowledge and applying it and teaching it. So that's ilm. Constantly improve in your knowledge, your understanding, your insight. Basically the mental. Right? So it's ilm, ibadah, and amal. Another way to remember it. So body, mind, soul. Ibadah is worship. And we know that Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. Allah did not create us except to worship Him. That is our purpose in life. The good news is, because sometimes I say this and I'm sitting across from someone at a table and I'm talking to them, giving a little bit of reminders, encouragement, dawah, and I mention this ayah and you can see their face like, oh my God, dude, you're one of those guys? You want me to spend all my time in the masjid because our purpose in life is to worship God? There's good news. I definitely encourage you to go to the masjid and pray 5 times a day, every prayer in the masjid if you can. But ibadah is referring to a lot more than that, than just personal rituals, which is what many of us think about when we think of ibadah. It's not your dua and Quran and fasting and dhikr and charity, salat. Only ibadah is all-encompassing. Ibn Taymiyyah, one of the greatest and most influential scholars in Islamic history, said that ibadah is doing all that which is good and basically away from all that bad, which is a nice definition. I love it because it's open. Our religion gives us a floor and there is no ceiling. Floor is in the basics. You know the hadith. A Bedouin came to Prophet Muhammad and he said, I'm going to pray, fast, 5 prayers basically, and that's all I'm going to do. And the Prophet said, you know what, if he does it properly, it's good, you go to Jannah. So the floor is easy. I think most of us can agree. It's not so tough to meet the 5 pillars. And the ceiling is infinite. You can look at history and look at different individuals and what they've accomplished. Writing encyclopedias, reading libraries of books, teaching people across the world. That's just some knowledge. Activism, buildings, medicine, science, I mean, it's endless, right? So the ceiling is endless. But all that falls under ibadah, right? Your personal rituals, but also your activism, which is the 3rd category, your amal. It's cool to have your own personal project, at least that's how I see it, right? Once you've done the basics of what you need to do, you're taking care of your studies, you're studying, you're praying, you're doing everything you need to do, taking care of your parents, friends, family, the things that you know Allah's going to ask you about for sure, where your money comes from, where it's going, your time management, and so on. You have some free time, you have some skills, some knowledge, some areas, some interests, some expertise, some hobbies. Start a personal project, whether it's an organization, whether it's an involvement on campus, whatever it is, and hope that inshallah Allah will reward you for it. That is your amal, that is your activism. And a few examples just off the bat. I mean, you need it's not really, I think it's not very necessary to give examples because you just have to scroll through Facebook. For every challenge and problem and complaint you see out there, that's an opportunity to do good. So from social activism, from charity work, humanitarian work, there are hundreds and hundreds of homeless people in Houston, and there are organizations that regularly go out to feed them. Join them. And if you'd like to speak, there are hopeless, there's plenty of opportunity for da'wah, so anyway, good idea. Civil rights, civic engagement, the list is endless, it's just missing you to get involved.